The fight for America's soul between the pro-life and pro-choice movements raged on all throughout 2019. It didn't take long for it to erupt in Wisconsin, but the first major flashpoints occurred on the East Coast. In January, the state of New York passed a law making abortion a fundamental right and removed protections for babies that survive botched abortion attempts. Virginia considered a similar bill. That bill did not make it through, but Virginia Governor Ralph Northam went on Washington, D.C. radio to defend it and explained the bill would have allowed doctors to perform abortions after a baby is born.
So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion.
This nonchalant description of infanticide horrified people across the country. And days later, President Donald Trump condemned it during his State of the Union address.
We had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb.
Congress did not act, but Trump's comments got the pro-life movement fired up. The movement got another big boost from an unexpected ally, the movie industry.
Sorry to bother you, but they need an extra person in the back room. Are you free?
The movie Unplanned told the story of a Planned Parenthood director who joined the pro-life movement. The movie gave audiences a disturbing behind-the-scenes look at the abortion industry.
After 12 hours in agony, I fell asleep on the bathroom floor. It occurred to me that this was the way I was going to die. I wondered who would find me. I prayed it wouldn't be my mother.
Unplanned was a surprise commercial success, just like Gosnell, the trial of America's biggest serial killer, had been in 2018.
So you had people that were watching them for entertainment purposes, you had people that were watching them just for education purposes, you had people that were watching them out of curiosity, but either way, those movies had powerful messages that were brought to a big audience.
You know, I've done legislation before with Abby Johnson coming here to testify, as well as other former Planned Parenthood clinic managers like Sue Thayer, and really, you know, they've been able to really push back the veil, push back the curtain as far as just how it is that Planned Parenthood bilks taxpayers out of millions upon millions of taxpayer dollars.
The movies got the attention of lawmakers around the country. Wisconsin State Representative Michael Schraw saw it with some of his fellow Republicans.
I wept through that movie. The first scene is so graphic, and my colleagues were weeping.
States with Republican-led legislatures soon began introducing aggressive pro-life bills.
I really didn't think that we would come to the point in our country where in the public consciousness we would have individuals, albeit maybe at the fringes, advocating, as was done by the governor of Virginia in the legislature in Virginia, that seek to allow for the termination of a life after it was born a survivor of a failed abortion.
Unfortunately, it seems like the radical pro-abortion people have no limits to how far they are going to go to say that human life is not valuable to those of us who think that it is.
Missouri, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio all passed heartbeat laws in 2019. In Wisconsin, Republican lawmakers introduced a package of pro-life bills.
My hope is to tackle this from a whole lot of courses, right? Not just one, but increase adoption access, make it easier for families to have a child, make it harder to get an abortion, make it easier to get access to, things that would allow for a child to thrive. So I hope it's a concerted effort that's successful over time.
The Born Alive bill was meant to protect babies that survive botched abortions.
If you think abortion extends to the life of the baby after the baby comes out and takes a breath, that just proves our point why we need this bill.
There was also a bill to prevent selective abortions based on a baby's gender, race, or health. Another required abortionists to provide patients with information about the effectiveness of drug-induced procedures and what to do if the patient changed their mind. The package would also deny Medicaid funds to abortion providers. Democrats opposed them all.
The bills we have before us, many of them, the ones that you're going to emphasize, there's not a health benefit. Healthcare professionals are opposed to these things. We're inserting lawyers, administrators in people's health decisions.
Your Democrat governor here in Wisconsin shockingly stated that he will veto legislation that protects Wisconsin babies born alive. Born alive.
President Trump visited Green Bay right after those bills were introduced and reminded the crowds about what was said in Virginia.
The baby is born. The mother meets with the doctor. They take care of the baby. They wrap the baby beautifully. And then the doctor and the mother determine whether or not they will execute the baby. I don't think so.
Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers had a strong reaction to that comment during a forum at the Milwaukee Press Club in late April.
To say that doctors in the state of Wisconsin are executing babies is just a blasphemy that, and I think of my own situation. My daughter's an OB/GYN. If somebody said that she had the opportunity to execute a child, that is just a horrific thing to say.
No, it's incredible. Until this crazy man in Virginia said it, nobody even thought of that, right? Did anyone even think of that? You hear late term, but this is where the baby is actually born. It came out, it's there, it's wrapped, and that's it. Who believes it?
I thought perhaps even though Tony Evers is radically abortion, right, pro-abortion, that on something like infanticide, where this could be a topic that maybe we could finally find something to start chipping away with Democrats to show that you can do what you say you believe, which is that you want it to be a choice, not something where it's about killing a child. Well, this literally is about killing a child.
That is an issue here in the United States. Right now, one of the biggest arguments we heard is that, we have no proof that this has ever happened. That's because there are no reporting requirements for a situation like that in a lot of states and here in Wisconsin.
The Senate and Assembly debated the pro-life bills in June.
I didn't want this to be a political shot across the bow. I'm seriously asking some of my colleagues that I know if it wasn't because of party lines or politics, you would be voting with our side on these bills today. I know it. I'm friends with a number of you.
During the debate, Democrats condemned Republicans for not approving Governor Evers' Medicaid expansion plan, which included sizable grants to Planned Parenthood. They also claimed the pro-life bills were a distraction and would ironically cost lives.
And the bills before us today are based on false premise, false statements of facts, and false statistics. The rhetoric you have used has not been to inform, but to incite. We all know what this bill will do. It will stymie, once again, physicians and providers from appropriate and timely care of mothers and her pregnancies. It will disallow compassionate, palliative medical care of a mother and her baby when medical catastrophe happens. These bills will create even more difficulty for women to access health care, and these bills will create even more disparity for women in poverty.
I just ask that all of you think about the vote that you're going to take, knowing that someday we will all stand in front of God and account for our actions.
Not a single Democrat in the state assembly or Senate voted for the pro-life bills, and Governor Evers vetoed them, surrounded by supporters of Planned Parenthood. This has become the expectation for Democrats across the country.
Just this weekend, Louisiana re-elected a Democratic governor, John Bel Edwards. He has signed one of the country's toughest laws restricting abortion. Is there room in the Democratic Party for someone like him? Someone who can win in a deep red state, but who does not support abortion rights? Senator Warren.
Look, I believe that abortion rights are human rights. I believe that they are also economic rights. And protecting the right of a woman to be able to make decisions about her own body is fundamentally what we do and what we stand for as a Democratic Party.
I think what we have seen is that there's no tolerance on the left for standard bearers for their party who are not fully in support of abortion on demand in all cases, as well as really a full government subsidy for abortion.
I think the left kind of pulled back the curtain on where they really stand on that issue. And we're seeing that in legislation that's being passed around the country in more liberal states. And we're seeing that even in things like the presidential candidates right now that are coming out, and they're all afraid to say anything that would be that would prohibit abortion in any way, shape, or form.
I don't know why it's partisan. I mean, part of it could be that the left has become less religious. So I think if you have a strong faith connection, you look at human life from natural birth to natural death, right? I mean, I think that's where we look and say, this is really important.
It's one more reason the left cannot stand President Donald Trump, who enacted an administrative rule that denies Title X funding to any facility that provides abortions.
Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life.
Planned Parenthood is very upset about that, but they're going on business as normal, which means that they still have plenty of money. Planned Parenthood is technically a nonprofit, but they are definitely a for-profit business.
And they are the abortion giant, and unfortunately, Wisconsin taxpayers and certainly federal taxpayers have played a major role in that. I'm very appreciative that the Trump administration has rolled back a number of things within its power to.
Planned Parenthood is especially worried that President Trump might get the opportunity to put another conservative justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, which would all but doom Roe v. Wade. Democrats in Wisconsin are particularly concerned because Wisconsin has a 170-year-old law on the books banning abortion. If the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, abortion would instantly become illegal in Wisconsin. That's why Democrats are continually fighting to change that state law.
It's the women of 2019 who should be making their own healthcare decisions and with their families and their healthcare providers, not the legislature of 1848 or the extremists of today that happen to be in Wisconsin who want to impose their beliefs and insert themselves in private decisions where they have absolutely no business.
Ever since Roe was decided, there's been an organized effort to chip away at access to abortion care. We have seen that full steam ahead here in Wisconsin, particularly over the last 8 to 10 years. We have seen new restriction after new restriction passed to make it harder and harder and harder to access abortion care.
The law on the books is the law on the books. We're not going to change that. Look, I hope that the Supreme Court revisits Roe versus Wade. This should be something that should have been a state right to decide, like many other decisions before Roe versus Wade was decided.
This summer, a pro-abortion theater group called the Abortion Access Front visited Wisconsin to protest the pro-life movement.
We have witnessed them at clinics terrorizing patients, terrorizing doctors. We have seen them burning Qurans outside of mosques.
A questionable claim, but which apparently justifies this.
But the Bible is what? A book! A book! A fictional book! That's right! The Bible is a book! The Bible is a book! The Bible is a book! It's been dated to some good movies. It's been dated to some bad movies. But we are here to show them the truth, to show them the way.
In sharp contrast to this so-called comedy tour's lunchtime performance on the Capitol Square, pro-lifers gathered outside Planned Parenthood clinics throughout October for 40 Days for Life, where they prayed and tried to talk to people heading inside.
I think it's about encouraging everybody to know that there is prayer and there is love for those who choose life, and even those who have made mistakes. There's forgiveness, and we want to provide a consistent witness to everybody that we're praying for all the people that go in and come out of this place and who work here, and everybody is loved by God.
But it looks like Planned Parenthood might have gotten a break after all in Wisconsin. It's suing the state for a law that only allows doctors to perform abortions, including drug-induced abortions. A federal judge ruled that the legislature cannot intervene in the case. The state of Wisconsin will be defended by Attorney General Josh Kaul. And Planned Parenthood spent almost $50,000 to get Kaul elected in 2018.
As soon as Democrats were in control of our Attorney General's office, Planned Parenthood sued the state, which is fascinating because now Josh Kaul, who is a candidate that they endorsed and actually donated to, is now in charge of defending our state's laws against Planned Parenthood.
When you have Attorney General Kaul, who on the campaign trail was basically saying that he did not feel like he was going to be able to defend policy enactments that he personally disagreed with, and for him to say, I think I can defend this one now.
I'm disappointed that this federal court said we're going to give Josh Kaul a chance to try to defend the law. I guess we'll see how he does. He says he's going to defend it. There's a difference between a rigorous defense and a half-hearted defense. So my hope is he lives up to his oath, which was to faithfully discharge the duties, which means you've got to vigorously defend it, but only time will tell.
Being a Democrat didn't always mean being pro-choice, and being pro-life didn't always mean being a Republican. Pro-life advocates longed for the days when standing up to abortion was not a partisan fight.
This is very much a political issue. I kind of would like to change the topic back to this is a human rights and social justice issue. This shouldn't just be divided strictly on party lines.
Even when I entered the legislature, there were still a few what you would argue would be pro-life Democrats that would be more likely than not to support pro-life legislation. That number has been zero for some time, and quite frankly has gotten to zero in their candidate pool as well.
And so for the moment, it seems the pro-life and pro-choice movements in Wisconsin are locked in a stalemate, at least legislatively.
Split government means that nothing's going to make its way all the way through the legislative process. Between the Republican legislature and Governor Evers, there just isn't going to be any sort of a policy change in statute.
Nothing's going to get worse. I promise everybody who's watching this, we are going to constantly defend the right to life, and we are not going to allow Tony Evers to do anything that would make it easier to get access to an abortion. But we certainly can't protect human life like I would want to, especially when we see something so egregious as people saying that a born child should be allowed to suffer and die simply because the mom didn't want him.
This issue is far from settled, but the upcoming elections could play a pivotal role in how it ends, which means both the pro-life and pro-choice movements will be in the fight for their lives throughout 2020.